Dear students of class 8A and 8B, welcome to my revision class for lesson number 3, the American War of Independence. Some points are mentioned. As for the following points, I am going to re-explain this lesson. First one, nationalism. The concept of nationalism. What is nationalism? The concept of nationalism. What is nationalism? You know, nationalism is an idea which came about in the 18th century. The people of a particular nation, they wanted to establish their identities, their independent rights, their sovereignty, their unity, by clearing that point that they belong to a nation, they belong to an independent, they belong to a race. This is known as nationalism. The concept which was formed among a people, among a group of people of a particular country, America. They introduced their concept nationalism by means of their self-determination, strong will. That's why, in a nutshell, we can say that nationalism is nothing but a sentiment that is based on the common cultural characteristics of a nation. Now, this system of this was one of the determining factors of the modern history. The concept of nationalism encouraged the people of the whole nation to be united against any injustice. For example, here, the age of nationalism in Europe started in the 19th century. By the beginning of the 20th century, nationalism started spreading all over the colonized lands of Asia and Africa. Why? Because everyone was influenced by the ideals of French Revolution, liberty, equality and fraternity, and the struggle of the American people for their independence. Next point, American War of Independence. War of Independence. In the 18th century, the people of America, in the 18th century, Industrial Revolution changed the entire situation of the world. And when the Industrial Revolution took place in Britain in 18th century, the European settlers in America were organizing a political revolution to end British colonial rule there, because the British, in the interest of themselves, established 13 colonies in America. Why? Because America was full of natural resources. The British during Industrial Revolution required many natural resources in order to meet the growing demand of their factories and industries. That's why they established 13 colonies in America. As a result, the Americans wanted to make their country free from British control, and they felt it necessary. Only when they felt it necessary, they realized it very important to them, only when the British government imposed many taxes on the American colonies. Only for that reason, the Americans realized that the country, it was their own country, but the Britishers established their colonies over there. That's why they must make their country free from British control. And since they did not have any representative in the British Parliament, the British cannot impose taxes on them. They realized it. That's why they asserted the right to rule themselves. As a result, a revolt was organized by the American people, and the philosophers of America, they encouraged them a lot to be united. France, another country, neighboring country, also encouraged American people, American revolutionaries to organize revolt and to fight against the British. That's why the American people were cheered up, they were inspired, and hence ultimately they were able to defeat the British soldiers. Now, next point, British colonies is America. After the discovery of Americas in 15th century by Christopher Columbus, it was decided that a number of colonies should be established there in the New World. By the mid 18th century, 13 colonies were established along, the eastern coast of North America, and the majority of the settlers were from Britain, and hence the British, the colony, 13 colonies were established by Britain, and each colony had one governor, according to which each colony was ruled by that very governor. But the governor's main work was to safeguard the interest of the British, but not the interest of the Americans. So another important, the causes of the American Revolution. There are certain factors which led to the revolt of America, or the War of American Independence. Number one, economic exploitation. The British government imposed heavy taxes on different goods of America. The American trades initially the American traders, they were earning money from their trade, but the British government, forcefully imposed many taxes on the Americans since they were their rulers. But the American traders, faced huge economic and financial loss, and the British wanted to monopolize their trade over there. The American people did not accept it. That's why they raised hue and cry against that system. The British government passed certain laws which were beneficial to them, but exploited American colonies economically. And another one, restriction on expansion of colonies. The British colonies were on the eastern coast of America. Western part was not under British territory. The colonists wanted to expand their territories into the west to increase their trade and agricultural production. But King George III of Britain restricted the colonies from expanding to the west. But how funny was it, the Americans realized it belonged to their own country. They wanted to extend their trade towards west. But the British had no right to obstruct the way of doing it. But it was due to the effort of King George III of America, restricted the colonies from expanding their trade towards west. What actually he wanted to do? He wanted the British government to develop direct trade links with the Native Americans, which enraged the colonies. The British government, the British traders wanted to attract the native colonies, Native Americans. They wanted to win over the Native Americans, which, enraged the colonies, 13 colonies, where the British established their rule. So the main reason, another one important factor was that the British government imposed many taxes on the Americans, and the 7 Years' War, which was going on in Europe in between America and France, proved to be very expensive for whom? For Britain. That's why Britain required huge money in order to make up their financial burden. The British government decided to impose many taxes on the Americans, but the American people did not want to shoulder the financial burden of Britain. In the year 1764, the British Parliament passed the Sugar Act and imposed taxes on sugar, but the Americans did not accept it. Besides, next year, in the year 1765, Stamp Act also was passed in the British Parliament, according to which it was decided that that one revenue imposing affixing of revenue on the legal documents was declared mandatory, and for that reason the Americans would have to purchase it by paying taxes. That's why this is known as Stamp Act. So American people, strongly opposed the system of passing Stamp Act because it belonged to their own country. It was their mother country, but they were forced to pay taxes. That's why the American strongly opposed it and openly made the matter clear that they would not pay any amount of tax, extra amount of tax, because no taxation without representation. There was no member in the British Parliament from American people. That's why they raised that very slogan, no taxation without representation. But a number of tax, in spite of all these, the British government once again imposed many taxes on them. For example, Revenue Act. A number of acts also were passed in the British Parliament. Revenue Act, the Commissioners of Customs Act, Indemnity Act, the New York Restraining Act, and these all acts were altogether. These all acts were collectively known as Townshend Acts. Townshend Acts means the taxes imposed on imports, tea, paper, glass, and pen. These were the extra tax. This extra tax is known as taxes are known as Indemnity taxes, Indemnity Act. But the American colonies refused to pay this amount of taxes. On the contrary, they all were influenced by the ideals of American philosophers and thinkers. They were John Locke, John Milton, and Thomas Paine. They encouraged American people to be united, to organize revolt against the British government, so that they must make their country free from British control. And the Tea Act and Boston Tea Party incident also took place. What was about it? The British, in the beginning I told you, once again I repeat, the British government imposed taxes on tea, and as soon as the taxes on tea tax on tea was imposed by the British government, the American could not compete with the British traders, because large ships would come from India, but the Americans had to pay extra amount of tax, but not the British traders. The Americans, could not compete with the British traders, since the British monopolized their trade. But that's why many American revolutionaries decided to destroy the British goods, the British wealth. And as soon as one large ship came from India, reached Boston Harbor during midnight, a group of American revolutionaries, they started throwing tea containers into the seawater and destroyed a very large number of tea containers. So this destruction, made the British government very much angry, and this act of revolutionary activities of the American people, the British government did not decide. They decided not to accept. That's why they declared Boston Harbor to be closed indefinitely and declared war against the Americans. The Americans accepted the challenge of the British, and both of the two powers met in the battle, and American soldiers defeated under the able guidance of George Washington. Under the able guidance of George Washington, American soldiers defeated the British soldiers, and then America became a free country. The British government was forced to recognize America, the 13 colonies of America, to be independent. Then 13 colonies of America got united, and in the name of United States of America, and George Washington became its first president, and he drafted a new constitution for the people of America. And last point, the philosophers and thinkers, John Locke, you know, John Locke, John Locke, you know, John Milton and Thomas Paine, their revolutionary thinkings, their revolutionary ideals, concepts, encourage the common people of America. So the people of America, they all were inspired by them, and they declared, whenever the British government declared the war war against American colonies, they accepted it. They accepted their challenge. And now, why did the British declare war on American colonies? The reason was the Boston Tea Party incident. As soon as the British refused to withdraw taxes imposed on many goods for the Americans, the American revolutionaries decided to destroy British properties, British goods, which usually would come from India to the harbor, Boston harbor. That's why one day during midnight, the American revolutionaries attacked one British ship which was full of tea containers, came from India, and they threw out all the tea containers into the seawater and destroyed it. So the British government got very much angry. They considered it to be their revolutionary activities, and in order to teach them a good lesson, the British government declared war on American 13 colonies. The American 13 colonies accepted it. They accepted their challenge. Since they were encouraged by France, they were encouraged by the philosophers of America, John Locke, John Milton, Thomas Jefferson. They all encouraged them a lot. As a result, George Washington accepted the leadership of the revolutionaries and gave a bold leadership with good strategy, and was able to defeat the Britishers. British soldiers were defeated and were forced to accept the independence of 13 colonies of America. Then the war between America and Britain came to an end, and America became a free country. So revision of this lesson is completed, my dear student. Only one chapter is left, revision. I would like to revise one more chapter from civics, lesson number 1. Then the revision for entire lessons, whatever I taught as per the syllabus of first unit test will be completed. Thank you.